I'm going to call the meeting order at 7 p.m. Welcome. For the audience here today, my name is Kurt Norwood, and I'm the chair serving as the presiding office over the Planning Commission meeting. In consideration of others and business conducted tonight, please silence your phones, any electronic devices, and refrain from speaking unless recognized. If you are in attendance and wish to speak during public comment, public hearing, cards are somewhere. Back of the room. Submit it to the recording administrator who's up in the front of the room, and close the public comment or public hearing. Again, this is a public meeting of the community of Glendora. We appreciate your respect, your participation here this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to our Madam Clerk this evening and request an oral roll call to be conducted.
Commissioner Crimmins? Commissioner Davis?
Present.
Commissioner Koss?
Present.
Vice Chair Faber? Chair Norwood?
Present.
The record show all commissioners are present.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Their flag's right over here. Okay, so with that, does anyone wish to reorder or add anything to the agenda? Seeing none. At this time, I'm going to open up to public comment, period. Invite members of the public to address the legislative body. Speakers limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on both on and off agenda items. Please fill out a speaker card, at least before, but certainly after. At the close of the public comment period, once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium, state your name and subject matter you wish to discuss. I'm going to ask if there are any public comment cards for items to be spoke on. They're not a public
There are
hearing.
none.
There are none. Okay, with that, I am going to close the public comment period. But at this time, I'm going to ask for reports from any of the commissioners. Commissioner Koss, Davis, Commissioner Faber, Commissioner Crimmins.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, I'm going to read in for special items, reorganization for term 2024 to 2025. I'm going to invite the Deputy City Clerk to report.
Sorry, Commissioner. Right now is the Director, Staff Liaison, and Attorney's statements.
Oh, okay, that is my last mistake in this position. So I'm gonna ask Director Kugel if he has any comments.
For just one item to report, I'd like to introduce Christy Marie Lopez, who's sitting to my right. She is the new Assistant City Attorney for the City of Glendora, and she'll be serving in this role as counsel for the Planning Commission during meetings, and I'll turn it over to her to say a few words if she would.
So thank you so much for having me. This is an honor and a pleasure that I get to serve as counsel to your commission. I look forward to getting to know you all a lot better. I've had the opportunity to take a little tour around City Hall, and I've been taking myself around the city, whether intentionally or not intentionally. Some of it was just a little bit getting lost, but it's a beautiful community, so I really look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, Christy. So, welcome. I'm assuming that there are other no reports from the city attorney at this time. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our recording administrator for our reorganization.
At this time, I declare the offices of Chair and Vice Chair vacant. Nominations are not in order for Chair. Are there any nominations for Chair?
Is there a correction? Nominations are not in order or are in order?
Are in order.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I nominate Brian Faber for chair.
I will second that.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I declare that You said Faber for chair. I declare Faber is elected for chair by acclamation. Congratulations, Chair Faber. I now will be turning the meeting over to you to conduct the selection of vice chair and the remainder of this meeting.
Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Commissioner Cremens.
And I will also second that.
Congratulations, Vice Chair Cremens.
All right. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the presentation on Measure Z, a proposed 0.25 sales tax measure. I'm going to invite the Assistant City Manager, Moses Lopez, and Deputy City Manager, Maria Ricci, to report.
Thank you very much, Chair Faber, for the opportunity to be here this evening. Marie Ricci, Deputy City Manager, is also here in case I get any of the responses wrong to any of the questions. But moving right along, I'm going to start with a disclaimer. As a public employee, I'm not allowed to engage in any advocacy activities related to anything on a ballot measure. So tonight's presentation is strictly for information and educational purposes. So if you see me squirming a little bit at any question that I get, I've got to contextualize it simply for informational or educational purposes. We can move on to the next slide. All right. Earlier this year on August 5th, the City Council voted unanimously to place the locally controlled 0.25% sales tax measure on the November 2024 ballot for consideration by the city's voters. This measure, now known as Measure Z, would ensure that the revenues that are being generated in Glendora benefit the local community. This is an important consideration. As many of you are familiar with Measure H, a Los Angeles County 0.25% sales tax measure that funds homeless services and prevention programs and activities. Measure H was approved by the voters of Los Angeles County in March of 2017 and is set to expire in September of 2027. It was originally estimated that Measure H would generate about $3.5 billion worth of revenue over its 10-year lifespan. In recent years, annual revenues are now well over $500 million per year. In June of this year, the Board of Supervisors approved the placement of a new measure on the ballot, Measure A. Measure A would rescind and replace Measure H with a 0.50% sales and use tax. If enacted, Measure A is estimated to generate approximately $5.5 million annually simply from Glendora, indefinitely to be expended at the direction of Los Angeles County. So for some context, since 2017, when Measure H was approved by the voters, the residents of Glendora have contributed approximately $20 million to the County of Los Angeles. And to date, the city has only received about $500,000 in total funding in Measure H. And oftentimes the city has had to go to great lengths to compete for those funds or to share those funds with some of our surrounding communities. To ensure that the revenues that are being generated in Glendora benefit our community, the City Council voted unanimously to place the measure on the screen now, which is a 0.25% sales tax measure on the November ballot. The text of the measures there, I'm not going to read it, but effectively this local measure is intended to capture the 0.25% that will be available once the county's Measure H sales tax ends either in September of 2027 through its natural expiration, or when it is repealed and replaced by Measure A. Taking local control of this tax back from the County of Los Angeles will help protect and improve city initiatives and programs, including public safety, infrastructure maintenance, and community quality of life measures. It also ensures that no other agency can claim that 0.25% that's being vacated by Measure H. State law caps sales tax at a rate of 10.25%. That's the current tax rate in the city of Glendora. However, legislation can be enacted to allow a revision to the Revenue and Taxation Code and allow agencies to exceed that threshold. and that's such the case for Measure A. Assembly Bill 1679 was passed by the California legislature in October of 2023, allowing the County of Los Angeles to exceed the existing local transaction and use tax. An argument in favor of the measure was submitted to the Los Angeles County clerk. Signatories of the argument in favor include the entire Glendora City Council, Gary Clifford, the president of the Board of Education for the Glendora Unified School District, also is a past mayor of the city and the 2023 Citizen of the Year. Dr. Cliff Hamlow, a past mayor and the 2024 Citizen of the Year, and Joe Cena, the president and CEO of the Glendora Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to read the text of the argument in favor. And I quote, "Please join us by voting yes on Measure Z to ensure that local funding remains in Glendora. As Glendora residents, we are privileged to live in a city that is a wonderful place to live, work, and play. However, we face significant challenges in addressing infrastructure, homelessness, and public safety concerns that this measure can fund. While the city generates millions of dollars in revenue on behalf of the state of California and the County of Los Angeles, too few of those dollars find their way back to Glendora. To maintain our high quality of life, the city of Glendora requires local control of existing funding sources that the passage of Measure Z will provide. The city has fulfilled its promises to the community with Measure E, a 0.75% sales and use tax adopted by the voters in 2019. City parks have received significant upgrades. Over 20 lane miles of streets and roads have been improved. Sidewalks have been replaced. Police officers have been added, and better accessibility to city resources has been established. Instead of a 0.75% sales and use tax, Measure E should have been a 1% sales and use tax. However, the county's existing homeless measure, Measure H, did not allow for that to occur. As Measure H is on the ballot to be repealed, the city seeks to capture the 0.25% sales and use tax to ensure nobody else can. Since 2017, the city has generated over $20 million for the county's Measure H programs, but has only received less than $500,000 of those funds raised by you. This measure seeks to right that wrong and put resources into the hands of your city where the residents can hold us accountable. Fiscal responsibility, accountability, and transparency make Measure Z a wise, responsible, and necessary investment for Glendora residents. The city has spent well over $10 million in staffing services and cleanup costs over the past 5 years in response to the challenge of homelessness in our community. I'm not going to go over all of the items that are detailed on the screen, but there are 3 that I do want to highlight to demonstrate the progress that has been made. First, we've added staffing in recreation and human services in the police department, approximately 6.5 full-time equivalent positions. We've established contractual relationships with Ocean Blue, who helps us remediate and remove encampment areas and in those places that are not suitable for human habitation, as well as with Athens to address the removal of trash and debris throughout our community. Lastly, we've purchased a van to assist people with their personal belongings and assist them in making necessary trips to their doctor's appointments, to court in some cases, or even to the DMV to get IDs and driver's licenses. All of this that's listed on the screen was funded by general fund dollars, not by Measure H. Current sales tax rate, as I mentioned, is 10.25% in the city of Glendora. Slide on the screen currently provides the current breakdown of each component of the sales tax by the taxing entity. On the left column, you'll see the 4 components of the sales tax that have been established by the state of California. The center column details all of the components established by the county. And then the right column, those sales tax components established by the city. This is what it would look like if both Measure A, the county's measure, and Measure Z, the city's measure, both pass. Under the county column, Measure H would be repealed and be replaced by Measure A. Under the city column, Measure Z would be added. So what does this mean? You start on the top left quadrant, where the county's measure passes and the city's measure passes. Measure H would be repealed, and both Measure A and Measure Z would take effect April of 2025. At that point, the sales tax rate would be 10.75%. On the top right, Measure H would be repealed, and only Measure A would take effect on April 2025. The 0.25% left from Measure H is available to be taken by any other agency in the county. On the bottom left, on Measure H's sunset, the Glendora measure would take effect in October of 2027. At that point, the sales tax would be the same as it is today. On the bottom right quadrant, there would be no change. However, Assembly 1679 would allow the county to continue to make efforts to pass a new ordinance proposing the tax. That authority, the county has that authority through December of 2028, so they get several bites at the apple. Finally, and just to give residents an idea of the types of things that could be funded if Measure Z were to pass, there's a sample spending plan on the screen. Again, this is just an example. The important point to underscore here is simply that it will be the city council's decision on how to spend that funding, not anyone else's, not the county of Los Angeles or the state of California. Locally generated revenue would be controlled locally. All of the information on this presentation and additional information is available on the city's website, where you can navigate directly to engageglendora.com/measure-Z. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Your presentation, Mr. Lopez.
Yes, yeah.
Opening for questions, not a public hearing or anything, or I'm just
Correct.
following-
This is not an action item. This is just a presentation for information, but you're free to ask questions of the presenter.
Questions, Commissioner Cost?
Just one, and I don't know if you actually know the answer to this. I know that the library is in need of retrofit. Has any of this money been earmarked for the library repairs?
Not currently. That's obviously something that the city council could consider. If we have had a pretty lengthy conversation about the state of the library and the need to make improvements last year and a half, if I'm correct. Council's got some options that it's considering. We've applied for grant funding through the state of California. Unfortunately, we did not receive it. So it's something that the city council still has very much at the top of mind.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. You mentioned that the funds Measure H have not really flowed back to the city of Glendora. You made a vague reference to them going to other cities around us.
Sure, if I can clarify. Of the $20 million that has been generated through sales tax revenue in the city, about $500,000 of it has come back to the city in one way or in one shape or form. A part of that $500,000, like memory serves me, it's about $140,000 of it is actually a grant that we share with other 5 cities. So in terms of direct funding allocation coming back to the community, it's less than 500,000.
Are other cities getting a bigger share than we are for some reason? Unless I'm,
No, the way Measure H is distributed and controlled is at the discretion of the County Board of Supervisors. The County Executive Office has a department called the Homeless Initiative. They develop a strategy every year and decide where the funding will go. A portion of all that funding is distributed back through the councils of government. So we're part of the San Gabriel Valley Council of Government. And a very small portion of that comes back to us. But there is no direct allocation to cities.
okay, so I guess that leads right into my next question. Why aren't they coming to us?
Well, I think that's a question well above my pay grade.
Anything can staff add to that? I mean, is it lack of action by the council, lack of action by community service?
I will say in that sense, no, the city council has been very much engaged with their counterparts at the county, demanding a fair share return. The way Measure H has been set up, there is no direct funding allocation back to the cities. That was never part of the program. So the county gets to determine how to spend that money.
And then my other question is, largely, this is a homeless funding mechanism. I misreading it? I mean, $10 million and 7 million went to buy property down there. So a large majority of the money for either H or Z or A is all geared towards homelessness, correct?
Well, Measure H, the county's,
I know they had
measure is,
roads and slurry seal and
Yeah.
other services and police officers, but the big ticket item that I see up there is homelessness, unless I'm
for the
misreading.
acquisition of the property, you are correct. Measure H money specifically set aside to deal with the challenge of homelessness throughout the county. Measure Z, ultimately, the spending plan would be up to the city council, how to determine how to distribute that money. Just generically speaking, every other year, we do conduct a survey of our community to assess what our community's biggest priorities or most important priorities are. Over the last several surveys that have been conducted, homelessness has been the top issue. And accordingly, when you look at the city council's specific plan, I'm in planning, that's why I'm saying specifically, strategic plan. You look at the city council strategic plan, there's a lot of focus in that in direct response to the community's concerns. And ultimately, our budget matches the city council strategic plan. So we do put a lot of emphasis on addressing this particular challenge.
Okay, my last question is, several years ago, when we passed the was it 0.5?
0.75.
0.7. It was presented as the county can come in, if we don't pass this, the county can come in and take monies. And I think that's largely the weight behind the passage of it, which did not come to pass. Is this that coming,
This is,
possibly?
this is another opportunity to take the last remaining portion.
So
if
the
and
same
when-
mechanism that was in place back then is alive and well today.
That's correct.
Commissioner Norwood?
Yeah, mine's a simple math question. So currently we have a 0.75 tax and Measure Z is proposing to take, because they're repealing the county one, we can grab that other 0.25%, make it a full 1%. Whether I forget, is it Measure H? What's the new county measure?
Measure A.
Measure A. Whether Measure A passes or not, if we pass it here in Glendora, we get that 2.25%.
That's correct. It happens under one of two scenarios.
One of
One is the natural expiration of Measure H in 2027, or if and when Measure A is approved.
If we approve Measure A countywide, would that supplant Measure H in 2027 or immediately?
Immediately,
Immediately.
or effective April
Okay.
2025.
And back when we did this 0.75, what was the max we could be taxed statewide? Was it
10.25%.
10.25? And has that been raised?
It has been raised for Measure A, to allow for Measure A. So the county,
So the county has allowed the increase of a cap just for Measure A.
that's correct. So the county pursued a piece of legislation that was approved by the legislature that empowers the county of Los Angeles to go above that threshold. Measure A would allow it to go above that threshold.
Okay, but if Measure A fails, we're capped out if Glendora passes the 0.25.
That's correct, except for the county has that authority through December of 2028. So it is
Gotcha.
reasonable.
And I mean, I know I'm going in the weeds, is there any cap at all that the legislator has limited the counties to? I mean, we'll be at 10.25. What else can the county do in 2028 and?
If their authority
Well,
under
cast
that
and vote, right?
legislation expires,
Right.
so let's, for hypothetical sake, they're unable to pass a Measure A, and it's passed or after December of 2028, then the county would have to go back to the legislature and
Gotcha.
ask for some additional.
Okay. So at the end of the day, we're hoping to capture that 0.25, that hopefully will sunset, and we don't allow the county to have the discretion of that money, and that discretion will lie with the city council here in Glendora.
If Measure H is repealed and replaced, that would give us an opportunity to go after.
All right. Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Thank you for the presentation. I think Norwood basically took all my questions, so thank you for your time.
I don't have any further questions either. Thank you, Mr. Lopez, and thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to public hearing. The Planning Commission recommendation on requested historical landmark designation for two structures on the campus of Cornerstone Bible Church, 400 North Glendora Avenue and 131 East Whitcomb Avenue. File number PLN 24-0013 and PLN 24-0014. And I declare that the public hearing is open. I want to invite planning intern Kyle Hawk up for presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kyle Hawk. I'm a planning intern here at the City of Glendora. It's nice to see you guys. This item is a recommendation to the Planning Commission for historic landmark designation of two structures, currently both owned by the Cornerstone Bible Church. These two structures are pretty recognizable here in the City of Glendora, especially the first one here, the Old Church Sanctuary Building. It's located on the northeast corner of Whitcomb Avenue and Glendora Avenue at the address of 400 North Glendora. And it is an original and still operating church structure with a very distinctive stone exterior. The second structure we'll be covering is known as the Malcolm House, and it's located at the northwest corner of Whitcomb Avenue and Vista Bonita at the address of 131 East Whitcomb, and it is a simple residential vernacular architectural style. Property is currently zoned planned development with a general planned land use designation of medium to high density residential. So in 2023, the City Council approved the Cornerstone Bible Church expansion project that included a tentative parcel map to consolidate 8 contiguous lots, change zoning designation to planned redevelopment, a conditional use permit, development plan review, and project-related CEQA. The project also included demolition of approximately 5 former homes and associated structures, and a condition of approval which required that the applicant request city designation of the 2 subject structures on the site as local landmark historic resource structures, thus ensuring their future preservation. So here you can see the conceptual site plan, which includes proposed church expansion with that new sanctuary building there. I'm in another one kind of on the northeast side of the lot, and the 2 historic structures that are proposed for landmark designation, which you can see there on the southwest and southeast corner, the old church structure and the Malcolm House. So the first of the 2 structures covered in today's presentation is the Old Church Sanctuary Building. It's a prominent and recognizable structure in the city. It was built in 1931. It is 6,650 square feet in size, 2 stories and 35 feet in height, and has a recognizable split rock stone masonry construction. The architectural style of this structure has been identified as Anglo-Saxon church-style architecture, which is characterized by high-pitched gables and a tower with an embattled parapet there that is kind of the most recognizable element of that structure. So pursuant to the Glendora Municipal Code, a property must meet one or more of the following findings to be eligible for the city landmark designation. So you can see those criteria here, 1 through 4. This structure meets criteria 3, which states the proposed features embody distinctive characteristics of a style, type period, or method of construction, or are valuable examples of the use of indigenous materials or craftsmanship. And criteria 4, which states the proposed preserved features are representative of the notable work of a builder, designer, or architect. So this structure was constructed from river rock, which was gathered and split from the local San Gabriel riverbed, from the original Church of the Brethren that formed this new church. They went up and mined the San Gabriel riverbed, took these stones and split them. They were laid and joined together with concrete and finished with black bead by local masons named Martin Pierce and John Shue. So it meets that criteria 3 as a use of indigenous materials. And then it also meets criteria 4 here, representative of the notable work of a builder, designer, or architect. It was by architect John A. Grunfor, who was an architect that also designed several notable buildings, most around the northeast Los Angeles area, all in various period revival styles. His most significantly recognizable work includes the Spanish Revival style Glendale Civic Auditorium. So the second of the two structures is known as the Malcolm House. It was named after its last owner, Mrs. Malcolm Tidwell. It was built in 1912 by William Foose, a farmer and homesteader from Kansas who had recently relocated to California. And it is a typical American vernacular wood frame house and is 1 and 2 stories tall. So looking back at the landmark designation requirements, this structure meets criteria 1, which states the proposed preserved features exemplify or reflect special elements of historical, architectural, archaeological, cultural, or aesthetic heritage. So this structure retains its architectural integrity. It was built at a time when Glendora was flourishing in 1912. And it is an intact example of early residential development, not directly associated with the citrus industry, but along the original residential corridors that were laid out by George Whitcomb in the 1880s. So finally, Planning Commission is being requested to make a formal recommendation to the City Council on the proposed local historic landmark designations for the two structures, as well as related environmental exemption. Thank you, and if you have any additional questions, the city planner here, Mark Carnahan, and myself can hopefully answer, and a church representative might also be available here or on Zoom.
Thank you, Kyle. At this time, I'm going to invite Bob Steving, the admin pastor from Cornerstone Bible Church, to present.
I really don't have anything to present tonight, but I did want to thank Kyle and Mark for doing a great job of researching, getting it all ready. This is a part of a requirement that we were required to do, part of the CUP, and that's what we're doing. Had any questions for me, but these guys covered it really well.
Thank you, Bob. At this time, I'm going to open public testimony and invite members of the public. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking only on this agenda item. Please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public testimony period. Once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium, state your name and subject matter you wish to discuss. At this time, I'll invite any speakers to come to the podium.
I do not have any public testimony cards.
I'm going to close public testimony portion of the public hearing and invite the applicant, Bob Steving, if you choose, to the admin pastor from Cornerstone Bible Church, to provide summarization and closing remarks if desired. We'll now move to discussions and deliberations from the commissioners. And Commissioner Cost? Commissioner Davis? Commissioner Norwood?
Mine's more educational. What are the benefits, and I'm going to ask staff on this, or our intern actually did a real good job, thank you. The benefits of designating these two structures as historical landmarks to the city, and I guess the church also.
I think from the city's perspective, it's just the preservation tool. It helps ensure their preservation for their, any additions or anything that would be needed to the building in its future. They would have to come back to the city for exterior changes, as well as it would help prevent a demolition. And again, this was a result of them wanting to tear down 5 or 6 other houses, and this came up as part of that discovery of learning that one of them was locally historic in terms of what its merits, and then kind of resulted in what the church should be too. But that's part of a preservation aspect from the church's perspective, or any resident who actually has theirs listed. There are Mills Act options for tax benefit savings, as well as and sometimes you can utilize local building code, historic building code applications.
Okay. Thank you. And it was all part of the CUP, I guess. They reminded me of that, so.
Yes, it was a condition of that project.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Thank you for the presentation, but no questions or comments.
At this time, I'll close public hearing. And I'll request a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Oh, motion, I'm sorry, a motion to approve.
All right, so I have a motion made by Commissioner Voss and then a second by Vice Chair Crimmins. I will now conduct or roll call. Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Faber,
Yes.
Commissioner Koss,
Aye.
Vice Chair Crimmins,
Aye.
Chair Faber. Chair Faber,
Commissioner Norwood votes yes.
In favor, yes.
motion carries 5-0.
On to number 5 now, right? So the next item, number 5, a recommendation to the city council for a specific plan amendment, zone change from Route 66 Service Commercial Zone to Central Route 66 Residential Zone, vesting tentative track map and development plan review for 39 homes at 723 and 7 through 731 East Route 66, file number PLN 23-0027. The applicant, Brandywine Homes, property owner, SVPP Properties LLC. I'll declare this item, the public hearing open, and I'll invite Senior Planner Natalie Espinoza to report.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Faber and members of the commission. Tonight's request is for a project with various applications, including a specific plan amendment and zone change from Route 66 Service Commercial to Central Route 66 Residential, vesting tentative tract map to subdivide 2 existing lots, totaling approximately 1.85 acres into 39 residential townhome condos, a development plan review for the project plan, and the environmental determination, which is the CEQA initial study and mitigated negative declaration and its mitigation monitoring program. The site is located on West Route 66, west of Glenwood Avenue. The site consists of 2 lots. It was previously used for vehicle repair and sales. As you can see from the street view picture, it's been vacant for many years. The site is currently zoned Route 66 Service Commercial, which allows for uses that are small-scale commercial, office, and light industrial uses. The applicant is requesting to rezone the site to Central Route 66 Residential to allow residential use and to be consistent with the adjacent residential zones along Route 66, located to the south of the project site. This is the existing site plan showing the existing conditions of the site. This is the proposed site plan showing the proposed 39-unit residential development. This is actually a better view. The site will consist of 6 row house buildings with 6 to 7 units per building. The proposed entrance is from Route 66, which leads to the 6 buildings through smaller driveways that branch out into the individual attached garages. There's a total of 98 parking spaces, including 82 garage and 16 open parking spaces. There will also be a common area between the northernmost buildings and the middle buildings that include an open grass area, central recreation space with a freestanding barbecue, shade structure, and picnic tables. The Route 66 specific plan indicates that new projects are expected to promote diversity or architectural style while maintaining continuity of scale, pedestrian amenities, patterns of open space, and the use of landscaping. The proposed architecture is Spanish colonial, which includes characteristics such as low-pitched gable roof with clay mission tiles, or in this case, it'll be S-type concrete tiles. Stucco exterior finishes, multi-pane windows with painted accents, and wood rafter tails and headers and wrought iron railings. So this is the view from Route 66. And these are the elevations of the building. There will be 6 different floor plan types ranging from approximately 740 to approximately 1,900 square feet. All units include their own garage spaces. 6 of the units are single-story, 1-bedroom, and will have a 1-car garage, as you can see on that far right one in yellow. There are also 9 units that will have tandem 2-car garages, as also you can see in that far right floor plan. And the rest of the 24 units will have typical side-by-side 2-car garages. An initial study on the project was completed in accordance with CEQA and concluded that the project will not have a significant effect on the environment with inclusion of mitigation measures, and a draft mitigated neg deck has been prepared. The public review period for the mitigated neg deck started July 19th and ended August 19th. During that time, we received comments from the Department of Toxic Substances. The response to comment is included in the packet. Additionally, in accordance with AB 52 and SB 18, various tribes were notified of the project in which they could request consultation. We received a letter from the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Quiche Nation indicating that the project site is located within the boundaries of the Quiche ancestral territory. The tribe submitted requested changes to the mitigation measures after the agenda was posted. And they asked for these to be adopted to reduce the project's impact. The applicant reviewed the mitigation measures and they agreed to the changes. The changes to these measures were sent out to the Planning Commission earlier today and are also available for the public to view. Staff and the applicant's CEQA consultant feel that the amended mitigation measures are similar to the ones in the original document and are typical mitigation measures based on other projects where tribal consultation had been requested. Therefore, staff recommends approval of these changes to the mitigation measures. Additionally, there was an error with the resolution when it was uploaded into the system. There are a couple of changes to the conditions of approval in the resolution that staff is requesting, including condition of approval number 11, to remove I, which indicates that the CC&Rs shall not be amended without the written consent of the City of Glendora. So that will be removed. Condition of approval 14, to read all mechanical equipment, including air conditioning units, for the units along Route 66 shall be located within patio enclosures or be screened from street view with landscape and physical screening barriers. And for number 15, just to be striked out altogether and remove this condition. This one had to do with the architecture of the project, but because the architecture is shown on the plans that are being recommended to City Council for approval, then there's no need to have that condition of approval. Noticing for the project was done on August 22nd, 2024, where property owners within a 300-foot radius were mailed the notices, and it was published in the San Gabriel Tribune and posted on the bulletin board. And staff recommends that the planning, we did receive 2 letters of support, one from the Building Industry Association of Southern California, and also one from an adjacent neighbor who received the notice. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council adoption of the resolution and the draft ordinance. I'm available if you have any questions, and I believe entire project team is here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Natalie. At this time, I'll invite Chris Courtney, Senior Project Manager from Brandywise Homes, to present.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Chris Courtney with Brandywine Homes. We appreciate the opportunity to present our project to you tonight. We've worked diligently with staff over the course of the past 1.5 years to provide a needed new home project to repurpose the vacant former auto repair and offices. I'd like to take a minute to share with you a little bit about Brandywine. Brandywine Homes started in 1994 with a plan to revitalize established neighborhoods due to a need to convert underutilized and neglected properties into much-needed housing. Since then, Brandywine has become one of the preeminent infill builders in Southern California. Over the past 30 years, Brandywine has now developed more than 90 projects in Orange and LA counties. One of those developments was here in Glendora. However, we've done several projects in nearby cities as well. As you know, vacant land is scarce, so these types of opportunities are a great solution to providing housing that cities desperately need. In mid-2023, we met with a couple council members, community development director, and other department heads to present our vision for the project. We then held a second meeting with 2 elected officials for another round of review. Following that meeting, we submitted a formal application. In July of 23, we met with staff to discuss the project and review our pre-application comments. Since that meeting, we have worked with staff to modify our site design and architecture to incorporate a single level flat, as well as we added and modified elements throughout the project. Staff suggested that we use a project nearby in Claremont for inspiration, which we did. We ended up adding Spanish tile, solid gates instead of tube steel gates to patios, raised our tower elements, replaced the proposed metal and cloth awnings with wood-like architectural features, added decorative site lighting, and enhanced our entry monumentation. We've worked hard throughout the past year and a half with staff to design a project that provides needed housing while also providing enhanced architecture to provide for a more scenic street scene. We've been responsive to city comments and made every effort to comply with city standards. I want to thank all the hard work from Mark and Natalie especially, and staff for their assistance. And we're in agreement with the conditions of approval with the revisions as noted earlier by Natalie. We're seeking your approval as per staff's recommendation, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. We also have our consulting team here as well. Our civil engineer is on hand if need be to address any questions about our plans.
Thank you, Chris. At this time, I'll open public testimony and invite members of the public. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking only on this agenda item. Please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public testimony period. Once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium, state your name and subject matter you wish to discuss. At this time, I'll invite speakers and ask if there are any.
There are no public testimony cards.
Going to close public testimony of the public, or close public testimony portion of the public hearing. I'll invite Chris Courtney, if desired, to come back, senior manager from Brandywine Homes, to summarize any closing remarks if desired.
Here, if you guys have any questions.
We'll move to discussions and deliberations and questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Cox.
I might have missed it. I didn't see it. Will this be maintained by, will there be a homeowners organization, or who will be responsible for maintaining this?
That is correct. There would be a homeowners association on the project.
Okay, I just wondered. I think it looks like a great project. I'm glad to see that lot being utilized for something very positive. I like the idea of the 1-bedroom, single story, great for elderly or handicapped. I'm glad to see that. I think it's a great project.
Commissioner Davis.
Which other project, infill project, did you do here in Glendora?
I don't have the name of it with me. I don't remember it offhand. Next to the public market. Yeah, on Arrow Highway. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the community offhand.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you. I think it's a good project for there.
Commissioner Norwood.
And I might have missed it. Gold line's right in the back, right? Are
That is
there
correct.
Any issues or any conditions with gold line, sound walls? I
So-
might have missed that part of it.
Yeah, we will be building a sound wall in the back. We'll be increasing the height. The existing wall is about 6 foot high. We're gonna go up to 8 foot high on the rear property line, and replacing the wall that's currently there.
Yeah, I think it's a good project. I mean, definitely needed in terms of housing, and certainly, I think quite a bit of homeless in and around that area too. Yeah, I think it's a good project.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Thank you for the information. Couple quick ones. Is there just one way in, one way out?
There is one way in, one way out. Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
The fire department's okay with that? They already take a look at through the planning process, that works?
Yes, we've already been through fire and had no issues.
Perfect. And then that entrance slash exit, is it gated or is it just open?
It's open.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Well,
I think it's a great project and the architecture and everything looks really nice. So
thank you.
at this time, I'll close the public hearing and request a motion.
I will make a motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Commissioner Cost, seconded by Commissioner Davis. I'll now conduct a roll call. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Faber?
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Cost?
Aye.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Aye.
Chair Faber?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
So move on to item 6. An ordinance of the City Council amending certain sections of Title 21 zoning of the Glendora Municipal Code, GMC, to implement various housing production actions from the 6th RHNA cycle, 2021 to 2029, General Plan Housing Element, file number PLN 24-0015. I declare this item a public hearing open and invite Principal Planner Hans Fredel to report.
Well, good evening, Chair and Commission members, and congratulations to our new Chair and Vice Chair. Working here? Okay. Well, tonight I'm pleased to present the fourth ordinance package, which is a package of zoning code amendments implementing the housing element, some of the commitments made to the city or by the city to the state. So by way of some background, the City Council adopted the 6th cycle housing element with input from the Planning Commission in December of 2022, so not quite 2 years ago. The housing element contains a series of goals and policies to address Glendora's housing needs. Those goals and policies are implemented through a series of housing programs that comprise the specific actions the cities will take to implement the housing element. HCD certification of the housing element is contingent upon Glendora continuing to implement the programs and action items that we're committed to in the plan. So the housing element contains 17 programs and 31 action items, which we've been before you with a series of these, constituting a series of code revisions and programs to facilitate housing production and to promote economic development. This is also, streamlining the production of housing, removing barriers to housing, those sorts of things to try to help the city meet its RHNA allocation numbers. This ordinance implements programs 7, 10, 15, and 16. And with 16, which was that big table of 30-something action items, it implements 14, 21, 22, 23, 25, and 29, as well as clarifies some previous updates to the ADU and SB9 ordinance and the DPR review process, which were part of some previous code revisions that we came to you with, also implementing housing element items. So this proposed ordinance is the fourth and final package of what I'll call a kitchen sink kind of approach here of zoning code amendments implementing the programs and action items in the housing element. So some background, just I mentioned some of those other ones, I call this the fourth. We were here in July of 2023, and that first ordinance implemented programs 8 and 9, which was the rezoning to increase housing density in line with the approved housing element. Ordinance 2081 was January of this year, which implemented 17 action items from program 16. And then ordinance 2085, which was in May of this year, was sort of a comprehensive update to our ADU standards, where we rolled in some of our SB9 policy framework as well to comply with state law and again, streamline the production of ADUs and SB9 units consistent with the adopted housing element. And then this ordinance is that next and final package of just a bunch of different things from the housing element coming next year. And you'll see a sort of a presentation on this at the next planning commission meeting in October 1st, sort of an update on our objective design standards, which is covering sort of all, just a big rewrite of all the different architectural guidelines and things we have in our code. And so that's also part of this series of housing element implementation measures, but it's again, kind of a more specific thing. So I'll say it's quite an accomplishment to get as far as we have with these implementation measures so far. And, you know, we're way ahead of a lot of other cities. So I appreciate the direction the Planning Commission has given us on things like the SB9 and ADUs and other measures that we've come to before. So it's been, you know, a lot of work getting here. So I'll start, that's sort of the background story here, and kind of give a high level overview of the different action items and programs that this ordinance implements, and then we can go back and look at more detail at any specific one. So Section 3 of the ordinance addresses multiple state laws, including AB 101, which are low barrier navigation centers, AB 139, which covers emergency shelters, and AB 2162, which is supportive housing, and requiring cities to allow these types of residential uses in different areas. This comprehensively amends GMC Section 21 or Glendora Municipal Code 2103-120 emergency shelters, which was out of compliance with state law, to comply with and reflect state law. And we worked, you know, extensively with the attorney's office to draft that section of code of this ordinance, which basically reflects the different state laws and implement our code. So slide 6, all right, mixed use density bonus. Okay, so I'll linger on this one for a moment. Required program 16, action item 23 of the housing element committed the city to provide a residential density bonus for development proposals if they were keeping or rebuilding the same or greater commercial square footage for mixed use projects. So essentially, if somebody's going to, you know, build housing on a site, almost like what we just heard, and they were keeping the existing commercial, the city's committed to provide some sort of density bonus to them, some way to get higher density. So our recommended implementation is to amend the municipal code sections that allow mixed use, just spread in different areas, to provide a 25% residential density bonus and a 1-story height increase for mixed-use projects if they are keeping or rebuilding, again, the same or greater commercial square footage as exists. All other applicable zoning standards set forth by the GMC and state law would apply, including any objective design standards that we have in the future. This next slide talks about Program 16, action item 22. And this is, again, another sort of mixed use type incentive. And this one commits the city to allowing mixed use in commercial zones if the commercial square footage is equal or greater than existing, but there shall be no net loss square footage, and 50% of the combined square footage shall be non-residential. So again, this is talking about mixed use in a zone that's commercial. So it's a way of allowing residential in zones that are just commercial zones now. So Program 16, action item 14 of the housing element committed the city to allow preservation and expansion of existing non-conforming residential along Route 66 if the building or houses residential has a valid building permit, regardless of the underlying zone. So there's some cases where there might be an old home or series of houses that are there in a commercial zone. And this kind of clears the red tape and provides economic incentive for developers to reinvest in those maybe deteriorating or neglected properties, housing stock, to improve conformity with our codes and then maybe expand to provide more housing or enlarge them. So therefore, the ordinance amends the Route 66 corridor specific plan accordingly to require a director level development plan review for these types of proposals. And again, that's in line with the housing element. Program 10 of the housing element requires developers of sites with existing residential to replace those residential units if they are developing them. So this was something, so there's a couple of these now where the state law and legislative environment changed since the housing element was drafted, written, adopted, and certified. So some of the things some of the things I want to talk about that we came up with in the housing element, that Planning Commission and City Council chose in that matrix of programs and action items back in April of 22, I believe it was, are now basically covered by state law. And this is one of them. So in this case, SB 330 subsequently was adopted by the state, amending and requiring this anyway. So we are acknowledging with this ordinance update that the city will comply with SB 330. So to that end, a few years ago, we developed an SB 330 replacement housing handout and form for developers of such sites. So we're already doing this, requiring the preservation of units if some sort of action would, or replacement of units if some sort of action would propose demolishing them or redeveloping in a way that would cause any sort of loss in total units to prevent no net loss. And we have another one of those. Program 16, action item 21, requires the city to allow residential on church / institutional sites. So again, as in the replacement housing consideration, the state sort of regulatory environment has changed in the preceding years that we adopted our housing element. So the passage of SB 4 specifically, called the Affordable Housing on Faith Land Act, allows for affordable multifamily housing projects or developments on religious and institutional lands owned on or before the passage of the bill. And I double checked that. I know that was a previous question we had is, could a institution basically buy property now and use that as a means to bypass local zoning regulations to develop housing developments and that are affordable, and they have to already own the land at the time SB 4 was passed at the beginning of the year to do that. So, but it does allow them at churches and institutions that own land today, or at the beginning of the year, to bypass local zoning code restrictions on affordable housing. So we again are acknowledging that we will comply with state law and our objective design standards. Program 16, action item 14, 25, and 29 all deal with density bonuses and other incentives, including parking incentives for affordable housing developments and proposals. There is the state density bonus law is very complicated, and there's a range of sort of, everything from getting out of certain local design guidelines or standards through hitting a certain target number of affordable units by 1%, and to all around getting higher density levels if meeting certain, affordability targets. So it's basically what we did, and also to avoid the situation where we are constantly up here having to re-amend every year our density bonus law to comply with whatever the state is doing. Because we have to comply anyway, this ordinance strikes section 2103-130 affordable housing incentives in its entirety and replaces it with a statement that Glendora will comply, and an acknowledgement, which we will anyway, with the California density bonus law as it is now or is amended in the future. And this requires local cities to do all these things anyway. So this way we aren't chasing what the state is doing each legislative cycle. And if somebody wanted to take advantage of the state density bonus law, they'd provide a narrative to us which provisions they were applying and which kind of bonuses they were seeking, and we'd review it with our legal team and regulate accordingly. Slide 12. So these are just a couple of cleanup things, which were from some of the previous ordinances that we've been here before you with, which is, once we adopt them, sometimes we catch other things in them or something requires a little extra clarification. And so since we're here doing 12 or 13 or 14 different things anyway, we'll throw those in there. So the ADU and SB 9 ordinance revision, when we revised the ADU ordinance a few months ago, with council feedback to simplify how big new primary houses could be on SB 9 lot splits, the decision was just to apply the underlying floor to area ratio. We did apply that to new houses being built on the portion of a new SB 9 lot split that's undeveloped. What we didn't do, though, was apply that same FAR to the existing house. So what this ended up doing was if somebody does an SB9 lot split, it would be, we kept that reducing factor in there so that they couldn't expand, if they were in a situation where their existing house wanted to do a home addition or something, they couldn't go all the way to the floor area ratio of the underlying zone. So this just makes it consistent. So the existing house can be as big on whatever lot it's on as the new house on the other side of the lot split could be on that lot. Sort of simplifies it. And I think that's with this, in the spirit of what we heard from Planning Commission and City Council through that period of adopting that ordinance. Finally, and I think this is my last slide of these changes here. The ordinance includes another cleanup measure similarly, which is to clarify that the DPR or development plan review exemption for projects of 10 units or less applies to residential and not just multi-family, as it does include single family developments. And I think that's the conclusion here. Happy to answer any questions, or we can kind of go back and revisit some of these specific provisions. So I know it's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. At this time, I'm going to open public testimony and invite members of the public. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking only on this agenda item. Please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public testimony period. Once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium, state your name and subject matter you wish to discuss. This time, I'll invite speakers to the podium and ask if there are any public comments.
There are no public testimony cards.
Okay, I'll close the public testimony portion of the public hearing and start with the discussions and deliberations and questions from commissioners. Commissioner Koss?
Thank you for that presentation. Is our purpose tonight to approve this or is it informational? What is our purpose tonight?
That's a good question. And this is a public hearing, so it's to recommend, make a recommendation to City Council and to adopt.
Okay, of these ones, which are different from the ones that we already, because I thought that we had already kind of sent these.
We've done a lot of very similar stuff. So again, kind of by way of that background piece, the housing element had, and I know there was a couple of long meetings over the several meetings over the last couple of years where there's those 17 some programs. And then it was program 16 has like that table that has table 41, I think I've got it. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Has, 31 or 32, 31, I think,
The
flavors.
chart with all the
Yeah,
different.
and some of the really kind of mind-boggling thing is that, that's why I call it the kitchen sink. Some of those things, like the different mixed use incentives, get very overlappy. Like they're kind of similar, but this one's worded a little different. And some of the action items are similar to programs and that sort of thing. And so, no, these are all specific things that were basically the remaining items. There are still a couple, I think in your packet tonight, there should be, and Jeff can correct me if this didn't go out, but we were going to include it's basically a matrix of where we are, project calendar of, I can see it from over here.
Attachment F to the
Attachment,
packet.
attachment F. And that sort of shows you all the different things and where we're at with these different action items and implementation measures. And so this ordinance very nearly finishes the housing elements commitments. There are a few things left, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, which are the objective design standards. That's a big one. When we go to work on our future general plan land use element, that will pick up a couple other really big things, which was like one of our commitments was umbrella CEQA or environmental review. That's kind of too big for just an ordinance like we're doing tonight. That's a big project. And so we'll probably combine that with our next general plan update. And there's a few things like that, but this takes care, and this will be the last of what I'm calling the kitchen sink stuff. The other stuff will be very specific things that's still remaining. And
This
it's
is
more
kind of the
programmatic.
odds and ends that we didn't do before.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, it's
Okay.
all the leftover stuff that we could get, and we said, hey, let's put it in an ordinance and get this done
Okay.
and move on to the next stuff.
That's why I'm thinking, okay, we've already done this before. I kind of was thinking that in my head. Okay.
Lots of similar things, but not the exact same stuff.
Okay, I'm good though. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
Can you define for me affordable versus low income?
Would be a good question for our attorney's officer Jeff today. There's
But-
different categories. I
think-
can tell you that
And-
based on.
And then as a
income.
follow-up to that, is there oversight and monitoring of affordable? I'm assuming there is for low income. But does it work the same way for affordable housing?
So I think, both terms are used somewhat interchangeably when you have, elected officials and sometimes other policy people talking about housing and housing
Hence
policy.
my question.
They'll throw out the word, we need a more affordable housing or low-income housing. So that's one way that those terms are kind of used interchangeably. Within, the health and safety code, the actual law that regulates, affordable housing is used to describe the different layers or actually different levels of affordability. And within the law, you have moderate income, you have low income, you have very low income, you have extremely low income, and all those categories within the law are termed affordable housing, and there's different categories, low, extremely low, very low, etc. And so that's how it's described in the law.
Those are based on median, the area income. And I think one of our first packages we came before you had actually the table with all the different income brackets for that.
Yeah, I remember that. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, it's the interchangeability that has me a little confused sometimes because
Right.
they both
So-
get thrown out there, and I know there's,
So think of it this way. So the all-encompassing, the umbrella term is affordable housing. And when you're talking about low-income housing, that's a particular category of affordable housing.
are all levels of affordable there's some level of monitoring that must go on to ensure that low-income housing stays low income.
Yeah, usually that is the way it works. Like, we're kind of veering off from the code, but I think if you're talking about the world of, getting affordable housing built, and then you have the city involved or the city's housing authority involved in monitoring it. Yeah, there's covenants recorded, and if it's rental housing, they're going to be 55-year covenants, and the city would probably, or the housing authority would probably have some responsibility in monitoring that if an affordable housing development came through and was approved, and there was an affordable housing agreement between the city and the builder, and we'd have probably a long-term obligation to do some oversight of development like that.
And SB 330 would kick into with the no net loss, so we look at that too. So if a site that has that is going to be redeveloped, they have to replace the affordable at the different income levels, categories of housing that they're redeveloping.
And then the no net loss, I'm correct in, you can't just tear down a house and put up a liquor store. Tear down a house, you got to put another house up or more. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks, Hans.
Commissioner Norwood?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it, and it's been a long journey, so you hit the nail on the head. It's house cleaning, and I'm ready to move on. Let's get to 2029 and have that discussion on the next Reno cycle, but, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Thank you for the presentation, but I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Hans. Real quick, I think item 16, it talked about you can add a story. You're meeting the calculations, right? I think is what it was.
Yes, we're talking about the mixed use incentive?
Yeah, so if you add a story, does the height addition change too, or the stories below it have to be lower to meet the height requirements, or how does that work?
It would be above the height requirements. So what that would mean, I'm glad you asked a question about that. So in a lot of places, it might be a 3-story height. This is another incentive we're throwing out there to say, hey, so I think an example, actually the one earlier was an interesting one. So let's say there's a site that's roughly an acre and there's 10,000 square feet of commercial on it existing. Drugstore or something like that. If they're going to preserve that commercial real estate for the city, which could generate sales tax or other things, how do we get to where they can have greater residential density than what's allowed in the underlying zone, which is typically going to be around 30 units per acre and probably going to be 3-story height limit. And so what we propose is a 25% bump in that density, but the allowable density, but then how would they actually do that? Really, the only two things you can do are gonna be let them go taller or get rid of all parking. The state does have ways to get around parking if it's within, a half mile of transit. We've talked about that. They don't have to do parking at all if they're within a certain distance of transit. But from one theme that's been evident to me coming before this planning commission over the last, I don't know, 3 years I've worked here in city council is, we do care about parking and cars on streets and things like that and traffic. And so we felt that, hey, probably the best way that we propose to get that higher density, if they're going to keep all that commercial square footage, redevelop it somehow into tax generating or some other commercial employment, whatever, is to allow them to go 1 story taller. That would be 4 stories basically, and that is up to the commission. You could direct us to change that and do something else. But the two things that come to mind to us are parking and height.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Norwood has one more question.
On that, on the 25% increase in density, is that subject to approval through the planning commission or recommendation of city council, or is that written in legislative state law?
The way it would, well, that is subject to, so our housing element said, hey, we're gonna come up with some incentives to, if to try to get the preservation of this commercial square footage and allow for it to develop with residential mixed use. So we came up with that. The way it would work if that was the adopted ordinance would be, so let's say 30 units per acre, they would, whatever 25% above that is, 37 or something like that and a half would be what they would be able to go to. And then the one height, they would be entitled to the 1 story height increase, again, preserving all the commercial square footage. But then other than that, the project would be, or development would be subject to whichever approval path it would be going on. So if it's 10, in that case, it's going to be more than 10 units probably. It's going to be going to a development plan review and or city, planning commission review, just as the development did earlier tonight. And or a director or whatever, depending on the size of development it is. And it would be subject to our objective design standards, which you will also get to weigh in on.
Thank you, Hans. Gonna close the public hearing and request a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 6.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion made by Commissioner Norwood and then seconded by Commissioner Koss. I'll now conduct a roll call. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Koss?
Aye.
Norwood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Aye.
Chair Faber?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
We're gonna move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion without individual discussion unless a commissioner has requested it be removed for separate discussion. Does anyone wish to pull or comment on item number 7? None, I'll request a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved by Vice Chair Crimmins, seconded by Commissioner Koss. I'll now conduct a roll call. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Koss?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Aye.
Chair Faber?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
I'll move on to new business. Item number 8, the Planning Commission consideration of an additional 18-month time extension for a development plan review and variance to allow the construction of a new 2-story single-family residence and related grading over 150 cubic yards on certain property located at 694 Gordon Highlands Road, file number PLN 240023. I'm going to invite the assistant planner, Aaron Sanes, to report.
Good evening, Chair Faber and members of the commission. Before you tonight is the request for an additional time extension on a previously approved development plan review to construct a two-story single-family residence. In July, staff received an application requesting a second time extension for an 18-month period, along with minor changes to the previously approved plans, which included a reduction in the square footage of the house and a reduction in the size of the garage. The changes to the plans, the minor revisions, have been reviewed and approved by the Community Development Director. And if approved, the new expiration date would be March 3rd, 2026. On September 7th, 2021, the Planning Commission approved the project and its related application request. On March 7th, 2023, the Planning Commission approved an 18-month time extension with a new expiration date of September 7th, 2024. The subject site is located within the Gordon Highlands neighborhood. The site is bound by vacant parcels to the north, south, and east, and there is an existing residence to the west. This is at the highest point of Gordon Highlands neighborhood. The following slides include the site plan, floor plans, and elevations of the previously approved project. Here are the plans that the director approved, and these are for your reference. Only this request is for the time extension. Finally, staff recommends approval of the DPR time extension, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. We're gonna open it for discussion and deliberations. Commissioner Cox?
I guess I'm curious, why a second extension? It seems like they just asked for a first extension. Why a second one?
So they were dealing with financing issues. So in order to secure a construction loan, they decided to reduce the size of the house that provided more favorable terms, and they're ready to submit to plan check within the next upcoming month to get the building permits.
Commissioner Davis?
Is there an amount of extensions that can be granted? Or is it unlimited?
There are no limits in the code.
Commissioner Norwood?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing for me too either, Aaron. I'll request a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Was a second by Vice Chair. Okay, so I have a motion made by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Norwood. I will now conduct a roll call. Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Cox?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Crimmins?
Aye.
Chair Faber?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And move on to the commission and staff closing comments. Commissioner Cox? Commissioner Davis?
I just wanted to thank anybody involved at the city level with the success of the flashback car show. It was packed, just packed. Off the record, I have some recommendations for it for next year, but what would you estimate? 10,000 people there at least?
I was not there, so I don't know what it was
Oh,
like,
okay.
but
Oh, it was packed. I absolutely jammed. And I have some recommendations on that, but we'll do that off the record. But it was a raving success. I look forward to next year's. And thank you for whoever participated in it.
Commissioner Norwood?
I just want to thank my fellow commissioners for the last year, allowing me to serve as a chairman, and appreciate all the support, and good luck, Chairman Faber.
Vice Chair Kremen?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
For me, I'll say thank you for making the chair, and hopefully I did okay and gonna keep improving. Closing comments, I could go staff too, right?
Yeah, just real quickly. So I think all of the, or a lot of the congratulations on the flashback event go to the Chamber of Commerce and the Glendora Kiwanis Club, who I think are the two organizations who put it on. But it's heavily supported by, to give credit in the city where cities do, by the City of Glendora Public Works Department, who does the street closure and makes sure everything's safe, as well as closing down the intersection of Foothill and Glendora, which is no small feat. And the Glendora Police Department, who's out there as well, making sure everybody's safe and having a good time, you know, during one of the biggest community events in the city, other than the holiday stroll, I guess, was the two, and the wine walk too. So those are great events. And then also I want to, so to mark this great milestone, I felt compelled to say something about the ordinance that you just recommended to council on the housing element. So that is the last of the big ordinances, heavy lifting related to the housing element. It took us almost 2 years since the housing element was adopted and subsequently certified by the state to adopt all the changes in our code and to kick off some big projects. So but we're not done, because there's more to come. So we are also working on, which is a very heavy lift and will require lots of changes to various sections of the code, the objective design standards. And those are the standards we're supposed to adopt and go abide by to comply with state law in part, because you're supposed to remove discretionary or judgment-based standards in the code. So you're going to have workshops on that coming up. In addition to that, we are also moving forward with a visioning plan, but with the grant that we got from the LA Metro, for development of key sites around the future A-Line station. And as you know, the A-Line station is under construction and they're testing it, and it's going to be open for service probably in a little over a year from now. So you'll also be seeing work product on that visioning process and have a chance to also be a part of that. So a year from now, we should be done with both of those things, or near or close to. I'm looking at Hans; he's shaking his head. Yes. So and at that point, with respect to long range planning, we will turn to more comprehensive update to the city's general plan, which we have not done since between 2005 and 2006. And that will involve a lot of public outreach. It'll be probably a 2 to 3 year process of updating the city's vision for itself. And so our current general plan is called Community Plan 2025, and I'm sure we'll probably call this next one Community Plan 2050. So it's a great opportunity for the commission, if you're sitting on the commission during this period, or even as a resident, to participate in this process. But about a year from now, we will start working on a request for proposals to go out and get a consultant, and it's a major project. And so that'll be a major 2 to 3 years between probably 2026 to 29, or hopefully maybe a little bit before, to get that done. So I just wanted to, just in time for another, well, it'll probably coincide, with the arena cycle. So, anyway, I want to congratulate staff, everybody who worked on getting us so far, the commission for hanging in there the last couple of years on the housing element, and talk a little bit about just the groundwork on what we've got ahead of us over the next year and the next 2 or 3 years after that.
Can I add to that, the next planning commission meeting, we are going to talk about those two topics, like you mentioned, the objective design standards and the Glendora Station Area Plan. And the importance of that is it's going to be a study session with you folks, but during the day before the meeting, the consultant's going to be renting on this room, and this room's going to have boards and all kind of information things for the public to come in and have the daytime discussions and interviews with the consultants. Well, I welcome you to invite all your friends and neighbors, anybody who wants to be educated on both those topics, because they're going to be huge for the city. what the city wants to look like with our codes for design, and then again, what we want to see around the quarter mile of the train station in terms of visioning. And those are both big topics. A lot of public can be involved, and we really want to get a good comments and some good feedback. Yeah, we'll be doing some marketing on that for sure.
With the success, or the completion, near completion of our compliance with ARENA. When we went to the Planning Commission in Long Beach earlier in the year, we talked to a great many people whose staff were downright clueless as to what was going on. And I think the first thing I said when I came back was, what we saw at the presentations there, we'd seen many times here. So that speaks well of staff's preparation in preparing us.
All right, thank you. I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:30 PM.